Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us in this studio and online. My name is Ola Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum starts its operation. Today is day 337 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor, and now we will be talking about our power grid. And joining us in the studio is Oleksandr Kharchenko, director at the Energy Industry Research Center. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So let's talk about the condition of our power grid. As of today, let's summarize this first year of the full-scale invasion. Why, what we have learned, how we survived this year. We see that we have stable power supply in our homes. There is no deficit in the grid. So what's going on? How were we able to achieve this condition? Well, this is the unique case when I know that the better the things are going, the less people are attending the press conference. So yeah, now there is less interest in this topic, which means that the work done by the power technicians is done quite well, and within the last couple of months we are rebuilding our power grid more rapidly than the strikes of the Moscow regime damage it. So now we have the sufficient level of generation to cover all the needs of the consumers. In this situation, obviously, is the coincidence of a number of positive factors, and we have to understand it too. The winter was quite warm. Now the snows are melting, which allows us using the hydraulic power plants generation efficiently. There are many days without clouding, which allowed us using the solar power plants efficiently too, and it's quite a vehement pace of restoration of coal power plants which were launched recently, and now we are in the situation when we seriously discuss the matter of export of electric power, because our generation is sufficient to cover our own needs and there is a big reserve of generation. We have to recognize that the plan of the Moscow regime to bomb the Ukrainian power grid back to the Stone Age, to make it split into pieces, to have the Ukrainians not to see the lights within weeks. That plan did not happen, and we should be happy about this. So our duty is to transform the situation from unstable and positive to stable and positive, because in view of the results we're having, the sufficient generation, the restoration of the networks in the majority of the regions, still we have a large number of emergencies, for example in Odessa region, but in fact it's not only Odessa region, which are some problem spots on the map of the electric power grid map. Such situation will remain just until the very moment that we restore in full our aerial networks and our generation capacities, because high voltage networks are in a condition when we were repairing it right on spot, because we didn't have opportunity to make some capital repair. We were not able to replace the spare parts in full. It will only start happening in June, when the pieces of equipment which we need the most will start arriving to us. But then the subsequent month, like July, August, September, will be very hot in terms of restoration and repair in electric power grid. At the same time, this equipment will be coming, which is already ordered or being ordered. The contracts are being signed at this moment, and just in the advent of the next heating season, it will be extremely important to rebuild the network to reinstall the new equipment which will arrive, so it will be a very difficult period for all of our power technicians. Well, pleasantly difficult when they replace the damaged parts with something new, with the new up-to-date modern equipment. So to summarize this period, we're not through the heating season so far, but our energy sector is already preparing for a new heating season, but the situation is pleasant. Okay, when we say the situation is unstable but normal, do we mean all the regions of our country, or do we understand that things are not going quite well in some regions? Well, look, the majority of the regions is supplied with electric power in normal way. People have 24 hours access to electric power, but this does not necessarily guarantee anything for us or for the residents of Lviv or Vinnytsia or Mykolaiv. There will be no emergency due to the overload of equipment or due to some unstandard layouts of operations which are not so well controlled and reliable as they are supposed to be or they will be. So anything may happen at any moment, and this is the reality. But at the same time, we understand that the Muscovites, they prepare the new attacks, they prepare new missiles, and in what way will we prevent the consequences of such attacks? Well, we will see it on the way. Recently, the Minister Glushenko mentioned that Ukraine is going out of the heating season with a proficit of capacities. What does it mean? Do we keep importing the electric power? Well, in fact, we have no import at this moment. Now that we have sufficient internal generation, import makes no sense because it's more expensive. And obviously business refused to import electric power right away. And as to the proficit of generation, the situation is kind of surprising. If we look at it formally, we have 1 to 2 gigawatts of capacity, then more than required by the internal consumption. So the generation is more than consumption at this moment. But at the same time, when you talk to the chief engineers of the station, their description is like, it works, but I don't know how. So it's very unstable. It's unstable, high quality, reliable work when you know that it will keep working, but we currently just like do the things we fix it with the duct tape. Well, it's not a duct tape obviously, but if we reduce it to the consumer level, it kind of looks like that. So everybody just wants to reestablish the proper operation of their equipment. That's quite clear, and everybody wants to make the situation such that they want to make sure that all the pieces of equipment operate well and reliably, and it's quite understandable. You know, the psychologists say that it takes 24 days to develop a habit, and I think that Ukrainians developed this good habit, I think, to save the electric power. But doesn't it produce any harm when we have this difference between the way we used to consume the electric power and how we do it now? Well, you know, on one hand, there is a significant reduction in consumption, and electric power generation sector has to adapt to new conditions, but we say that Ukraine has a crazy potential for reduction of consumption and energy efficiency, and specifically through reduction of consumption, because compared to an average European level, Ukrainians really consume a lot of electric power, and we really have to learn to save. That's a scientific fact. I think we've learned a lot. And at the same time, I'm hearing this question from my closed ones, like, what should we do with the generators, with the power banks, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying, don't do anything with them. We will still may make use of them, because we have to preserve this readiness level at least for a number of months, because we cannot forecast what will happen within the next 3 or 4 days even. We cannot guarantee anything. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions on the floor, please go ahead. Oksana Polishuk, Ukrinform. Could you please tell us how is the stability of operation of atomic power plants generation, and how did the presence of the representatives of IEAE influence its stability? Well, it's quite stable, and the presence of the representatives of the IEAE did not influence it in any way. They gathered their information, they handed to IEAE, but the Ukrainian power technicians, they work in the same way, regardless of the presence of any experts in their power plants. They work according to the protocols. So, and what are the technologies for protection of operation of power plants in view of the threat of the missile attacks? Well, a lot is done already. The physical protection is significantly improved. During winter, we built certain systems of physical protection in the generation facilities, and there is a huge plan on how to restore the new infrastructure with the view of the military threat. But that's the question mostly to the government. I know that Vice Premier Kubrakov is responsible for these issues, so they are the persons you should rather talk to. Well, I would like to continue this topic. The Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal mentioned that we developed new projects for development. We developed new projects for the protection of for the physical protection of our energy capacity, starting from the concrete protection coating and so on. So do we plan to build some underground facilities or something like that? Well, there is a lot of plans. For what I understand, they still don't have money for that, and I cannot say what is planned to be constructed. There is a lot of ideas with different degree of creativity, a different scale, starting from the scale of Egyptian pyramids and all the way to some healthy developments. I cannot say which ideas will be implemented in reality, because I just don't know. Well, and another question as to the Kakhovsky water reservoir. What's the situation over there? What do you know about that? The situation is complicated. The flooding helps us, and the high water level helps us. The flooding started early, and it will continue for a certain period, but then the water level will start falling. The Kakhovka water reservoir will become a significant problem. Moscow terrorists are not going to do anything with either the dam or the floodgates. They just drain the water, and it creates a problem for cooling of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and for Nikopol and for Nova Kakhovka, and there's a lot of problems, and I cannot tell how they will be solved further on. As to the IEAE and Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, there was recently an information that another shift is being delayed there. They were not able to get rotated normally. For what I know, that there was already a rotation, and within the last 3 days I'm hearing some good news from there, that the occupiers are walking across the station, and they start to find out what they should steal from the nuclear power plant, which means that they feel that they should vacate the premises shortly. Well, thank you for this information. I'm happy to hear that. Joining us was Oleksandr Kharchenko, the director at the Energy Industry Research Center. Our next briefing is at 1500.